I'm Matt Corser from the Strengthening and Sustaining Ohio's Suicide Prevention Coalition's initiative. Welcome to Segment 5 of our on-demand CRA training series. Today we will do a deeper dive into conducting CRA interviews. We'll cover two topics. The first is we're going to provide a deeper overview of key steps in the CRA interview process. We'll also identify supplies, resources, and technology you need to support your CRA interview process. As always, all of our materials are on the webpage, including this video, the PowerPoint slide deck, and tools and resources, including your interview introduction, the interview script, and a list of supplies and technology resources that you'll need. Before we go further, though, let's review the basic steps for conducting a community readiness assessment. First, you'll need to select and define the community for your community readiness assessment. Second, you'll identify a problem of practice. And for this initiative, we have a shared problem of practice, and that is your community's readiness to engage in a comprehensive approach to suicide prevention using the CDC strategies. Next, you'll plan to conduct your CRA. That's going to involve forming a CRA team, obtaining supplies, and not many are needed, preparing the interview and introductory scripts, identifying in one sense 5 to 8, but probably more likely 6 to 10 key informants from various community sectors. You'll then conduct your CRA interviews and make sure you record them. You'll transcribe the interviews. You'll score and analyze the data, report the data, share the results with your coalition and the community, and then use those results to develop a plan to increase readiness. Now, there's a number of key steps for conducting a CRA interview. First, you need to determine how the interviews will be conducted. Second, you'll gather all of the materials you'll need for the CRA interviews. You'll select key informants for the CRA interviews. You'll recruit them to participate. You'll prepare your key informants to be interviewed. You will then conduct the CRA interviews and transcribe them. And this segment, segment 5, is going to get us started with the process. First, determine how your CRA interviews will be conducted. And you do have multiple options for conducting the interviews. CRA interviews have been in the past done face-to-face, via telephone, and via video conferencing such as Zoom. And each one of these modalities works, and each one of them has been used successfully in the past. However, the realities of COVID-19 mean that face-to-face interviews probably are not the best way to conduct a CRA interview for this initiative. We recommend that you use Zoom for your CRA interviews. It's going to allow audio only and also audio and video connections. It's going to support dial-in via phone if you need that. And you may need that for key informants that don't have technology resources or high-speed internet. The other thing is that aside from being face-to-face, having video is going to help you build rapport during the interview process. Your coalition will need to purchase a Zoom Pro account if you do not already have one. And a year subscription to Zoom is an allowable expense for the initiative. Zoom costs $149.90 for a full year, or $14.99 if you want to go month to month. And you can work with Michelle from the Suicide Prevention Foundation on any budget revisions that are needed. If you've not used Zoom before, the resources page has video tutorials to walk you through the process. And this is a screenshot of what the Zoom homepage looks like. And all of your training materials are going to be in that resources tab up near the upper right-hand corner of your page. Next, you're going to need to gather materials and equipment for your CRA interviews. And there are some materials you're going to need no matter how you do the interviews. You'll need an interview introduction. You'll need the interview script or questionnaire, and you'll need to have incentives ready if you choose to provide them. And in the past, CRA interviews have been done with incentives, sometimes a gift card, and they've been done successfully without them. So this is really a decision that your coalition can make, and it should be something that matches the context of your community and what you feel you need to have for the process to be successful. The equipment you need is going to depend on how you conduct the interviews. If you're doing them face-to-face, you're going to need a digital recorder. If you're going to do them via telephone, you're probably going to need a digital recorder and what's called a telephone pickup. And the equipment and supplies list that we've provided has examples of model numbers and what each of these types of equipment looks like. If you're going to use Zoom, you'll want to make sure that your interviewer has high-speed internet, a computer or a tablet that has a webcam, and a strong microphone. It also is good when you're reaching out to schedule these interviews via Zoom to make sure that you know whether your respondents have high-speed internet access and a webcam. As we talked about in the previous slide, you can certainly work around it if they don't have high-speed internet access. But that's just going to be something that you're going to want to make sure that you know of before the interview starts. And the handout on supplies is going to have a lot more details for you. Next, you're going to identify key informants for your CRA interviews. Your goal is to collect information from a wide variety of community members who have first-hand knowledge about your community. This means that you really do need to go beyond your coalition membership. For the CRA process, a good key informant is going to have big ears, and they really may or may not be the loudest voices in your community. And we want to make sure that you know that key informants you select for this process don't have to have a lot of knowledge about suicide as a public health concern in your community. It's probably good to have some that know a lot about it, but it's also good to have others that may not have suicide on their radar as a public health problem. There are lots of different types of respondents that are used in CRA interviews. It might include school personnel, law enforcement, judges and court personnel, city-county employees, leaders, elected officials, faith leaders, health or medical professionals, mental health and treatment providers, and community members. Community members in particular can bring a unique perspective to this that can help you really understand your community's readiness. You can think also about the 12 sectors for coalition building. And ideally, you're going to want to try to conduct 6 to 10 CRA interviews. And that probably means that you need to identify and select 10 to 15 key informants to approach. As you go through this process, pages 20 to 23 in the Triethnic Community Readiness Model Manual has a very helpful planning tool for identifying key informants. And segment 6 is going to focus on this process in a lot more detail. Let's talk briefly about making the ask. And segment 6 also is going to focus on this. But as you think about the process, what you're asking your key informants to do is to spend an hour, sometimes longer depending on how much they talk, with you during doing a structured interview process. You're going to ask them to share their knowledge, experience, and attitudes with you. As you think about making the ask, and know that the next segment will focus on that in greater detail, consider that you need to share your knowledge and commitment to address suicide with a comprehensive approach. Your coalition's origin story, which we worked on in May, is equally important in helping your key informants see that by participating in the process, they're helping your coalition and they're supporting your community. You will need to be ready with an elevator speech that clearly outlines what you're asking your key informants to do during the interview process. And it never hurts to be enthusiastic. Your enthusiasm is really contagious. Another thing to think about during the CRA interview process is preparing your key informants to be interviewed. This is a new experience for many community members. It may not be for leaders, it may not be for some of the professionals in your community, but certainly for many community members, oftentimes they're not asked for their opinions. So you're going to want to read the interviewee introduction prior to beginning the interview process. That's going to set your key informants' expectations. It's going to make sure that they know that you have to follow a very scripted interview. It really is going to tell them what you need them to do. And it's going to emphasize that during the process, there really are no right or wrong answers. During the CRA interview process, it's important to practice. You can practice with coworkers. You can self-practice and read the interview out loud. That practice is going to help you get through the interview. It's going to help make sure that you can pronounce all of the words with the questions. Some of the questions are long, and that practice is going to help set the rhythm so that you can read the question without getting twisted up or tangled up in some of the language. Some other key components to keep in mind you're going to want to know how to operate technology and ensure that the interviews are recorded. This last part's really important. If the interview's not recorded, you can't score it. You're going to want to have all of your materials ready, including the introduction and the interview script. And you're going to want to be comfortable with administering the interview questions exactly as they're worded. And we're going to do a very deep dive into the interviewing process in segment 7 of this training series. After completing your CRA interviews, you'll then need to have them transcribed, because you'll score those transcripts. Segment 8 is going to focus exclusively on transcription, but just know that there are multiple options. We recommend a web-based service called otter.ai, and that's listed on the supplies handout. And there are other options as well. And also, please know that otter.ai costs are allowable costs for your funding. Segment 5 is focused on a few things, providing an overview of key steps in the actual CRA interview process itself. We've also identified supplies, resources, and technology you'll need to support your CRA interview process. Segment 6 is going to focus on deciding who to interview and how you engage your selected key informants in the CRA process. Once again, all of these resources, including the video, slide deck, and supporting materials, are located on the web page. Thank you so much for your help with this process and for being part of this training series.